Welcome back to 2K Away. Welcome back. Do you have to put on Carmex while we're doing it?
This is who I am. I don't know why you're even questioning.
Nobody wants to watch you put on Carmex. Anyway, welcome back
What you think.
to 2K Away. I'm Paige. That's my sister Peyton. We are no longer 2,000 miles away from each other, but that's how we started. So that is how we're keeping it.
Yes.
So last week, we started off talking about Charles Cullen, the nurse who went around to different hospitals and was killing people.
Yes.
Angel of Death. So this is part 2. We are finishing up with this douchebag today. And this is when the juicy stuff starts. Because last week left off with he transferred from St. Luke's to Sacred Heart Hospital, was not there for very long. And then he moved in with his new girlfriend and then got a job at Somerset Medical Center. And this was in late 2002. So this is the beginning of the end for Charles.
Good. Also, quick disclaimer. If you ever see like our cameras change a little bit, I'm still playing with this setup. So sorry in advance if this isn't like what it normally looks like. You know what? Let me scoot this closer. That looks way better. Okay, good.
Are you sure?
It does, actually.
Late 2002, Charles started at Somerset Medical Center back in New Jersey. So we went...
Sorry.
So we started out in New Jersey, a few different hospitals. Then he switched to Pennsylvania. Then he went back to New Jersey. So this is his 9th employment as a nurse since 1987. So 8 hospitals total, 1 nursing home. So he became really close friends with another nurse there. And this was friends. He didn't get obsessive like he was with a other couple girls.
Not relationship-wise?
Not
either?
relationship.
Okay.
No.
Probably for the best.
Well, and he's currently dating another nurse that he had met at, I think it was St. Luke's, and he's moved in with her. She has kids too.
Oh, is she the one that he moved in with like after like a couple months?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And she has children?
She has children.
Not a great decision, honey.
So, he became friends with another nurse there. Her name is Amy. And Amy she's awesome. So she thought he was a great nurse and extremely helpful. He was the first to help if somebody from the pharmacy part of the hospital was delivering medications to put in the med room or whatever. He was there helping him put stuff away, restocking, all of that. She knew that he was constantly looking at all the patient charts.
Oh, it was such a great guy.
Super great guy. Yeah. Into 2003, there were some strange deaths here that resulted in being insulin overdoses in patients that weren't diabetic and digoxin overdoses in patients who were not on the cardiac unit.
So in this hospital, they actually tested for that with the autopsies.
Yes and no, though. It was... Yeah, they ended up having to do a autopsy on another patient, which I'll talk about. So, protocol at this hospital with overdoses, like digoxin in particular, meant that they had to call poison control to see if this type of overdose could be caused by any other factor. They said that the body doesn't naturally produce digoxin, and the only way that the patients would have that high of dig levels is if someone specifically gave them the medication.
Okay.
So,
also, I'm sorry if I like smiled a little bit when you said poison control, because from my days as an EMT, I've always had the poison control number memorized.
Really?
Yes. Because from the advertisement that if you've been poisoned and you don't know what to do, call 1-800-222-1222.
So random.
Well, that's just like, if you put it to a song, I will remember it. Just like, I don't think it's the quadratic formula. Maybe that's what it is. I don't remember. But I've memorized that particular formula from algebra to the tune of Pop Goes the Weasel. The x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Welcome to my brain.
Let's get out of that really quick, because that's a scary place to be. So,
Okay, continue.
one of the nurses was instructed to call poison control on these digoxin deaths. But she knew about the insulin ones too. They told her not to tell them about the insulin ones.
Why?
Just talk about the digoxin
Why?
deaths. That's what the hospital higher-ups told her to do. She was not supposed to talk about the insulin deaths. So she called poison control, got a hold of, it wasn't Dr. Marcus right away. I'll be talking about Dr. Marcus. But she talked to one of the doctors on there. She did talk to them about the insulin deaths as well. So she was talking about the digoxin. She was talking about the levels that they found in the digoxin, levels of the digoxin in these patients.
So you're telling me that she just said, fuck you, administrators, and she told them about the insulin levels too?
Well, they said that she was super nervous about it and kind of offhandedly mentioned insulin overdoses as well. And they were like, do you have other overdoses that's not just digoxin? And she said there was a couple that were high levels of insulin in them as well. And they're like, you need to call somebody, like the authorities.
Yeah, poison control told her.
Yeah.
Well, good for this nurse.
Well, and the poison control doctor that ended up taking basically this case is Dr. Stephen Marcus. He was kind of the head of this poison control center. Mm-hmm. He got increasingly more worried about what she was telling him. So, because he's like, okay, the body doesn't naturally produce digoxin, so somebody gave it to them. Mm-hmm. Whether it be accidental, whether it be a family member doing that on accident, a regular person on the street coming in and dosing people, or somebody at your hospital, an employee.
I don't think it's somebody coming in and doing it to all these random different people.
No.
I'm not saying that it's not in the realm of possibility.
Well,
but I doubt it.
Even Dr. Marcus was like, if this was an insulated event or a isolated event, insulated. We got to keep it warm.
Right.
If this was an isolated event, if this was just one patient that happened to die of a digoxin overdose, this could be,
that's probably like
explained away as like
something.
Negligence or accident or something.
Yeah, but this many people, that's no.
But when you have multiple people plus multiple people with another drug as well,
right,
then you got something going on. So he asked to see the patient files and the information regarding their levels. He concluded that the police needed to be involved in this investigation because they either had a very careless nurse or nurses, or someone was doing this on purpose.
Yeah.
So, Dr. Marcus, he was the one that actually got the ball rolling.
Thank you, Dr. Marcus.
Because in July, now, again, Charles started working there late in 2002. So this is July of 2003 now. He told the department heads, because he got a hold of the bigwigs at the hospital.
Dr. Marcus did?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And he told them about his findings and what would have to happen and everything like that for this. And he, like, straight up, you need to take this to the authorities. You have to contact I don't know if it was the health department or their equivalent of something like that. You have to contact them if something like this happens.
Right.
This is happening multiple times in your hospital. You have to contact the police. And nobody wanted to believe what he was telling them. And they said that they wanted to do an internal investigation first.
Ooh.
Yeah. So
it's so aggravating.
Dr. Marcus was like, I'm giving you 24 hours to call the police or I will.
Good. Thank
Little
you.
did they know he was recording every single phone call because he had multiple phone calls to these people.
Good.
He recorded every single phone call
Good.
that they made.
Good.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah, he's amazing. And he called the police.
Good.
He didn't give them the 24 hours because clearly they didn't do it anyway.
Yeah.
He called the police.
Yeah, I would have done the same thing.
Oh yeah.
I would have been like, they're not gonna fucking call the police.
No, they're not.
No.
They didn't. So
like not to talk poorly on this hospital, but big organizations like hospitals, colleges, universities, they'll do stuff like this.
Yeah. Well, they don't want to get sued.
I know, and it's
First and foremost, it's a business.
yeah,
It's not just a hospital. It is a business that people are running.
right.
So that's what they want to cover their asses, basically. So,
No, I know.
So all the phone calls that were recorded was later used against the hospital because of their negligence in putting a stop to all the deaths.
Good.
So, yeah. So there were two main investigators on this particular case. They had a hell of a time creating a case for this. They had a horrible, horrible time.
Yeah, I can only
doing this.
imagine.
So one reason, the big guys at the hospital, they were not cooperating, and they or giving the information that they were requesting.
That doesn't
Not really, at least.
that doesn't really shock me.
Yeah. So they were telling the investigators that they were handling it internally, and supposedly they had like a few months worth of their investigation, quotes. Mm-hmm. So the investigators were like, okay, so send us all the information that you have so far.
So during this time, was Charles aware that there was an investigation started, or
So the big people at the hospital, they had already
interviewed him
a bunch
of
of different nurses.
yeah.
So they said. So they had already interviewed a bunch of different people, like, the fuck is happening type of deal.
Right.
Because obviously people are dying at their hospital, so they are actually going to the people on the floor and being like, why are these people dying? What's happening?
Right.
So the investigators were like, okay, give us what you got so far. They faxed over 4 pages. It was a memo about Charles Cullen.
Okay.
Yep. Didn't really say a whole lot.
Well, with
At
4
all.
pages, I doubt it.
4 pages. So when they pressed the hospital about it, they were like, oh, yeah, I mean, we did question all the nurses. So the investigators are like, okay, so do you have transcripts of that? Oh, no. Okay, so do you have notes? Like sticky notes even? Like literally did anybody write anything down during these interviews? No. Mm-mm. So do you have recordings of these interviews?
So this means that the interviews never happened. Like,
No,
I'm
we
sorry,
do not
but unless
have-
they are recorded, they never happened.
And no, we don't have recordings of the interviews.
Keep hitting my mic.
I
Sorry.
really wish you would stop.
I really wish I would stop too.
So the police, or the investigators, they were pissed. Because they're like,
Well, I can
the fuck are
imagine.
you doing then? They're like,
Like-
okay, so we have this memo about Charles Cullen. Is he your main suspect in
Right.
this investigation? They're like, no.
What?
And they're like, so, excuse me. Kitty.
Is your camera picking him up?
Not really. He's just barely out of the camera. So anyway, so they're like, okay, so the fuck is you faxed us a 4-page memo about Charles
Yeah,
Cullen.
so
Is
what
he
are
your
you actually
suspect?
doing?
Or they're like, nah, not really. We don't really have a main suspect, but there is this phlebotomist that maybe could be. You might want to look into him because he's got beef with some of the upper management, something. So they're like, okay, that's at least something.
Okay, but how does beef with upper management equal to killing a bunch of patients?
This is what they said.
Okay.
So the investigators are like, well, I guess we have at least a couple names. Let's go with these guys. So they looked up that phlebotomist. He has, like, nothing. The dude's clean. There's background. There's no police involvement with this guy. I mean, there's nothing. Dead end on him. So they're like, well, let's look up this Cullen guy. Let's try that. So they were just going. So happy. He's laying down in between my legs.
Oh my god.
And he, like, just, like, reached up with his paw and touched my arm
So
and then
pathetic.
got all comfy again.
So pathetic.
No, you can't have that.
Watch your cords.
Yeah,
His
I know.
tail is twitching and I don't fucking trust him.
I know. So they went by Charles's resume that he had given this hospital on, like, his previous employment records and stuff like that.
Yeah, but that's a lie.
Well, yeah, exactly. He's not putting all of his hospitals on there that he's been at.
No.
So what hospitals they did find on there, they were looking into those hospitals and they're like, well, we don't have his records anymore. Multiple ones. Not just one or two. Multiple of his past hospitals were like, sorry, don't have it. One had, like, some kind of write-up that he was written up about something. And that was, like, all they had on him. So they're like, what is happening? So they're like, okay, let's try the police database. So they saw his stalking and the OP. They found all of that. So they're like, okay, this guy's a creep. Let's look more into him.
Yeah, but just because you're a creep doesn't mean you're a murderer. So.
Right, exactly. So while they are looking into Charles, they're like, okay, so now what we have to do, we don't have a crime scene, really.
Right, no.
We don't have a body, really. I mean, most of the people who have died have already had their funerals and they've already been buried. So they're like, we don't have an active body.
Yeah.
So this is a really weird homicide investigation, first of all. So they're like, okay, let's focus on one of the patients. So what they did, they got one of them that was a digoxin overdose. And he was a reverend. He's an older man. His sister was, like, the only family that was there ever with him. So they decided to focus on this reverend. So what they wanted to do was get all of the scheduling that all the nurses were on. They wanted to know who was there while he was in the hospital, and they wanted to get all of the meds that was supposed to be administered to him, that were administered to him. They wanted to get all of that. So at this point in time, this particular patient had been gone for a few months.
Okay.
So the hospital said that the Pyxis, which this was the new way of dispensing medication, this is the little mobile drug thing.
Oh, okay.
So it has a little screen thing on the top that you have to put in the patient's name. Of course, you have to put in who you are as a nurse.
What year was this?
This is 2003.
Okay.
So, because up to this point, I don't know exactly when the Pyxis was started being a thing, but up to this point, he was easily getting the medications just from, like, the med room or, whatever.
Right.
But this time, the Pyxis was something that was recording.
And making people more accountable.
Exactly.
And that sort of thing, which is a good thing.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So you type in who you are, which nurse you are, type in the patient that you're administering or getting the medication for, type in the code for the medication, and a little drawer pops out and where you can get the medication. Sometimes there's multiple medications in one drawer, whatever.
Right.
But the investigators were like, okay, we need because they were like, we need the scheduling. They were like, okay, here you go. Here's the schedule for around the time this patient was in the hospital. They were like, okay, now we need the med list and we need, all of that information. They're like, well, see, the Pyxis, here's the thing. It only stores the records for 30 days and then the records are gone. So we don't have that for you. They're like, well, fuck. There's one thing we can't look at then.
Yeah, but isn't there a way that they can upload the records to some place and have those stored in a database?
So we're going to get to that. So if you can stop getting ahead of me.
I just asked a simple question.
But the hospital's saying, sorry,
I'm
it
really
only
tired
stores
of the
it.
hostility on this podcast.
Sorry, it only stores it for 30 days. So sorry, we don't have anything to give to you. So
they were like, oh, okay.
they're like, oh, shit. So the more they looked into Charles' checkered past, the more he looked good for these deaths.
Right.
So one of the investigators was like, I'm just going to try it. He looked up the manufacturer for the Pyxis and gave him a call. He finally, of course, it's some kind of, I don't want to say salesperson, but kind of salesperson that he's talking to.
Right.
And he's just asking questions about the Pyxis. And he's like, is there any way possibly to collect any data that was erased prior to the 30 days that it gets erased? And the representative was actually really confused. And he's like, is there something wrong with your Pyxis? Is there something wrong with your machine? Because all data is stored all the time. It stores it from the beginning of when this Pyxis was started. You turn it on, it starts recording and keeps all of it.
Wow.
And this investigator was like, huh. And he was like, he went to the hospital and was like, you're going to give me all of the Pyxis recommendation or records because...
Hey, don't hit the table.
I'm going to do what I want.
You did that and I heard a boom from the freaking mic stand. Okay. Yeah, so
he went there and was like, you're going to give this to me.
Yeah.
And I guess the lady, because this is the woman that he had been in contact with. I don't remember what her name is, but she was like, okay. Yeah, I'm going to get that right to you. So they had all the Pyxis information.
Good.
So now that they had that, he was like, okay, so let's actually...
Do you know who told him that it was only stored for... Was it like the department that manages the data that told him that it was only stored for 30 days? Or it was like the administration?
The administration.
That was telling him?
Yes.
Do you think they knew that? Or do you think they outward lied?
No, they straight up lied to them. Because all of their stuff, they have their attorneys in there now too, so... But yeah, no, they straight up lied to him.
Okay.
Yeah, because then once he was like, okay, you're going to give this to me now. Otherwise, we're going to get messy with subpoenas.
Yeah.
And she's like, okay. So, yeah. So, now that they had that, they started questioning the nurses themselves.
Good.
So what they agreed to do, though, was the administration was like, okay, we'll let you do that, but one of us is going to be sitting in on the interviews as well. They were like, fine, whatever, great. Well, with that being said, when the investigators are questioning the nurses, of course, the nurses are terrified because they have this investigator. They've got the department head there. Shit, are you looking into me? Is my job on the line?
Of course.
And the investigators, like, every time I asked a question, they kind of eyes darted over to the administrator and then answered the question type of thing. So they were like, don't know how fully truthful they were able to be with them in the room. So then they interviewed Amy. So Amy was not the one to take shit from anybody. She, at a young age, decided she had her own horrible past as well, but she took it as, I'm not going to take shit from anybody now, and you're not going to intimidate me.
I love that.
And she was like real tall. She's like 5'10", 5'11", something like that. So she's like, motherfucker,
I'm a stomp on people. Hell yeah, Amy.
So right away, of course, now there's a million rumors spreading across the hospital now. And people are starting to wonder if Charles is the head of the the cause of the investigation and all of that. So, and with her being really good friends with Charles, she's like, are you serious? Can you not do this to Charles? He's a great nurse. Why are you doing this to him? Type of thing. So she
was the one that was friends with him?
yeah. Yeah.
Oh, Amy.
So, but she saw him as, her little Charles, because he's quiet, but he's self-deprecatingly funny, and he's helpful, he's a great nurse. That's how she saw him. Touch my mic again. So, when she went into the room, she's like, I don't give a fuck who's in here. I'm going to tell you what I think of your investigation. She's like, this is ridiculous. Because the other thing that they started doing, and this was months before even they started investigating, they started putting bigger restrictions on insulin. The hospital did themselves.
Good.
Yeah. So you had to sign something.
That's one of the first good things that they've done.
Right.
Okay.
So you actually had to sign something before you were allowed to get the insulin. And Amy threw a big stink about that because she's like, are you shitting me? I have to do this for insulin? Really? This is not a narcotic or anything like that. So why do we have to do that? So she's already pissed about that. So then she gets into the interview and she lets him have it. And of course the investigator's just kind of like, he's just sitting there listening to it and he's letting her talk. And so he starts questioning and she's defending Charles and everything like that.
Yeah.
Well, at one point in time, the lady, the administrator person, she gets up and leaves for some reason. And in the book, I know it was really kind of funny because the investigator was like, okay, don't know why, but we need somebody basically on the inside. We need somebody that we can trust, because they weren't even telling the investigators what they were doing in their the administrators what they were doing in their investigation. They wanted to keep this as close to the chest as possible. So they didn't want to tell any of the nurses really either.
Yeah.
But they were like, we need somebody. We need at least one person.
They're like, we like you.
And yeah, so he's like, I don't know why, but there was something about her, how she didn't give a shit about the administrator being in the room. He's like, there was something. I had to try it.
Yeah.
So he took...
Like, out of everybody, she seems fearless enough to actually be honest and truthful with everybody involved.
Well, and the other thing is, she's defending Charles. He's like, oh, she's friends with him. So when the administrator walked out of the room, he took the Pyxis records, slid it over to her, so she could see what he was doing, and she looked at it, and her tune changed immediately.
But she was like, what do you need from me?
So when before the lady came back into the room, he took the Pyxis records back from her, and she was a totally different person, because then her wheels started turning and she started thinking like, what the hell is this type of thing. So what they saw in the Pyxis history, they saw him ordering a ton of certain types of medications, ordering some medications and then canceling them, ordering a ton of Tylenol, which in it was said there too, if one of the nurses had a headache and they needed some Tylenol, they would just go to the Pyxis, order themselves some Tylenol, and just take the Tylenol. Everybody did it, and it was fine. Department heads and everything like that, they were fine with that.
That may have been, one of the things that he used to, quote unquote, try and commit suicide.
'Twas not.
It wasn't? Okay.
Nope. I'll tell you why he was ordering Tylenol a little bit later.
Okay.
So
that was the first thing that came to my mind.
Yeah.
Because you said, every time, he would swallow take a bunch of pills. Yeah. So...
that could have been when he was at home trying to do it, but he never did it at a hospital. He was always at home when he tried to do that.
No, I know, but taking a bunch of Tylenol, taking it home, is just in case.
But also you can just, Tylenol is something that you can just buy over the counter though. So, but either way, he was ordering a ton of Tylenol. He was canceling a bunch of Tylenol. He was ordering other stuff and canceling it. But his Pyxis history was huge though.
Yeah.
And Amy later says he was ordering a ton of things in 1 month that she may not order in 6 months. He was ordering that much stuff.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah. So none of it was right to her. So then she agreed to work with the investigators.
Hell yes.
Yep. Amy. So they contacted her.
Yes, Amy.
I know. So
I hit my mic.
They contacted her and they set a meet at her house. Mm-hmm. So they go to her house They told her that she was the only one that they were telling all the details of their investigation to. And she would need to keep it very quiet, and asked her to be their informant of Charles.
Oh my God, do you know how fucking excited I would be if I was
Yeah,
like,
so of course she was super nervous at first. And actually, not for nothing, Amy had heart issues. She collapsed a couple times at work. She ended up having to get a pacemaker.
Oh my God. Wait, how old was Amy?
She wasn't very old. I don't think she was in maybe her 30s or 40s.
A great heart.
Yeah, no, she didn't have a great heart.
Physically, like
emotionally,
metaphorical heart. She had a great one. Okay.
Yeah. So she was super nervous, trying to keep her heart rate under control and everything like that.
Poor girl.
While she was talking to them and what they were trying to do. So, but after she was like, I need kind of, not necessarily convince me, but kind of, she's like, I need to know what's going on, what's happening. And she explained to them about all of his weird Pixis reports, why they were weird and everything like that, so that they could understand that a little bit better. Because, of course, these investigators are like, this is gibberish to us. Like, tell us what's happening with all of this. So, literally, while they were at her house, and after she's like, okay, yes, I'll agree to do this, she got a phone call. They're like, no, go ahead. Answer, that's fine. Answer the phone. She did. It was literally the lady that was sitting in all the interviews, that administrator. She asked, that if the investigators decide to talk to her again, she would think it's a good idea to have their attorney sit in with them. She doesn't recommend them talking to the investigators, wants to know if the investigators had talked to her, reached out to her, all of that. So she basically, not on speaker necessarily, but they're all huddled around her phone listening to this. And of course, Amy's playing it super cool. She's like, no, I think the interview went fine. I mean, I don't think there's any issues and everything like that. She's like, am I being investigated? And of course, the lady's like, oh no, but I just think we think it would be a really good idea if they try to talk to you again, that you need to have our attorney sit in with you.
Right.
Blah, 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 So, yeah, they wanted to cover their asses and not tell the investigators anything. So, but ultimately she agreed to help the investigators. They ended up getting permission to do a fake traffic stop on Charles, because they're like, we need to listen to him, not only with Amy, but we need to get in there and listen to him. So they said that they had to impound his car due to a ton of unpaid parking tickets. And Charles is like, I don't have any unpaid parking tickets. They're like, yeah, but see, this is showing you have a ton of them and they're just unpaid, so we have to impound your car now. So he's like, WTF? Why are you what? Yeah, what is happening?
That's weird.
So
where are they going?
So they took him to work, because he was on his way to work.
Yeah.
And they took the car, they bugged it. So they took the door panel off. They put a wire in there, put the door panel back on. Called Charles, like, hey, my bad. You don't have unpaid parking tickets. We're so sorry. We're going to deliver your car to work for you. So they did. And that was that. They didn't get anything. Was that
legal?
I don't know.
Okay.
But that's what they did. They got permission to do it.
But that is funny that seems like such a weird way. And they're like, well, look at that. I guess we don't have any unpaid.
Shucks.
Golly. Yeah. But Charles was like, what the hell?
Yeah. Charles was like, I paid all my parking tickets.
I would have been first of all, if I was Charles, I would have been like absolutely livid.
I would have been pissed.
I would have been like, the fuck? I don't have any parking
I am
tickets.
on my way to work. I paid him.
I was very
so
upset.
they didn't actually get anything from that wire though, so it was kind of wasted time. So
hey, you know what? Every little thing that you can get, I guess, is a good thing.
The thing is, the very next day, the hospital fired Charles.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So Amy played the sympathetic friend.
Was there a reason they fired him, or was it just like, hey, we're covering our asses, we think that you were involved with this, so bye?
Well, I think that's definitely what it was, but I
Yeah.
don't remember what they said exactly it was.
Yeah, because I'm sure they didn't say, we think you killed everyone.
No.
Bye. No, I'm sure it was some sort of
Charles
reason.
told Amy that he thinks it's because he lied on his applications about, or not lied.
He did.
He's not admitting that he's Get out of here. He's not admitting that he's outwardly lying on his resume.
Yeah.
He's just like, who can remember exact dates of when you worked at places? That's probably what it was.
Of their jobs.
That's probably what it was. They just think I lied on my resume because I don't remember the dates that I worked at certain hospitals. So Amy played the sympathetic friend. They listened. They had her phone bugged, basically.
Yeah.
And they listened in on all of her phone calls with Charles. She was definitely telling him, oh my gosh, honey, I can't believe what's happening. That's ridiculous. Please keep in touch with me. I have to have my Charles here. So, she was playing that friend. And the investigator said she was an absolute natural at this.
They're like, hey, do you want to change careers?
Seriously. Yeah, seriously. And at this point in time, he got his girlfriend pregnant.
Oh, God.
But a few months in, she was tired of his shit and was constantly telling him to move out, but he was dragging his feet on moving out. So he was just kind of existing there, basically. So, yeah.
Jesus.
So, Amy, of course, she's thinking about all of these things while she's at work. She's trying to hide the fact that she's working for the investigators and everything. And she was the one that realized that digoxin is in the same drawer as Tylenol. So all of those Tylenol orders, that drawer pops open, digoxin is there, readily available.
Strange that they're in the same drawer.
Right. Because she found this out, because she's never really put two and two together, but she found this out because she had a headache one day and just out of habit went to go get some Tylenol, and she figured out two things on this. Because she was like, she went to go get some Tylenol out of Pyxis, and then at the last minute ordered it, but at the last minute she was like, you know what? Going through her head, she's like, I don't want them to think that I'm involved in any of this, and I go to order a drug type of deal, and I don't want them saying any kind of backlash on me with ordering Tylenol from the Pyxis for myself.
Right.
So that's all going through her head quickly because she orders it, but then she cancels it. The drawer still pops out.
So that's what all the cancels too.
That is all the cancels. Yeah.
Okay.
He orders it. He cancels it. It still pops out. So yeah. So that was her aha moment because she's like, this is how he's doing it. Yeah. So of course she immediately reported that to the investigators. She's like, here's all these Tylenol orders. Some of them were canceled. Some were not. This is what's happening.
Yeah.
Needless to say, Pyxis revamped their security measures after this loophole was figured out.
That's awesome.
Yep.
Good for Pyxis.
Yep. So
is that's a company that still it exists today? I'm assuming.
I think so. I didn't look up Pyxis, but I did look up this other company because Amy also told investigators, and this is actually when their very first meeting at her house. Mm-hmm. They were like, so we finally were able to get all of his Pyxis reports because, they lied to us at first and told us that it saved 30 days. The administrators also tell all the nurses that it only saves for 30 days as well. So none of the nurses realize that it's saved permanently on Pyxis.
That's honestly probably a good thing, though.
Yeah. So that was big news to Amy.
Yeah.
So then she was like, well, what about Cerner? And the investigators were like, who's Cerner? And she's like, you don't know about Cerner? And they're like, no, because the hospital administrators failed to tell them their patient reporting system, Cerner, the big cart that now nurses wheel around with the computer, and when you get in, they ask you all their information.
Oh, okay.
Cerner is the company. Mm-hmm. So I looked them up too. And they're definitely still a thing.
Okay.
So obviously it probably looked a lot different in 2003,
Of
but
course,
basically
yeah.
that's what it is. All the patient reports go on that. All of the nurses have, their own patients on there. You can look up any patient in the hospital on there. All their vital signs goes on there. Any medications they were given, literally everything goes on Cerner.
Okay.
So she's like, what about Cerner? Did you get his reports on Cerner? And they're like, no, didn't even know about it. So they're like, great, another thing that they failed to tell us at the hospital. Once they realized that they have to get this as well, this was going to be even more red tape for subpoenas for his Cerner reports, because it actually has patient reports on it.
Right, of course.
So Amy agreed. She actually volunteered and suggested that she do this. Anytime she went to work, she printed out a little bit more of Charles' Cerner reports.
Can I send her a gift basket?
I'm telling you,
Amy, we'd like to send you a fruit basket.
this woman is awesome. I want to be her
amazing.
friend.
Yes.
Because, she would print out a little bit at a time of his Cerner reports and give to the investigators. So that's how they were able to get that.
But did she lose her nursing license over this?
Not that I've seen.
Okay, because I mean, like, technically, it'd be a HIPAA violation.
Yeah, I don't know. That's how they got it.
Okay,
That's how they got it. So
I mean, I'm glad she did this.
I know,
because every time that these investigators try to do something, I understand hospitals, they're very liable and very prone to being sued and whatnot. And I understand. I can empathize with the reasons why they weren't very cooperative. But at the same time, you have a bunch of people dead in your hospital
under very
suspicious circumstances.
Yes, very suspicious.
That some of them probably would have lived and gotten out of the hospital.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
It's like, yes, I understand you have to do what's best for the hospital, but you also need to do what's right. Mm-hmm. Like, this is not good.
No.
I'm like,
no.
in fact, you're opening yourself up to even more lawsuits by doing it in this manner.
Yeah.
So it's good for Amy.
Yeah, seriously.
Good for Amy. I'm glad she did it.
She's awesome.
Thank you, Amy.
You're going to love her even more later, too. So, when they got all of his records, it was creepy, to say the least.
Yeah.
Because Amy said that she would always remember that Charles was constantly glued to the Cerner screen during his shifts, but she thought he was just obsessively looking at his patients to make sure that they were still doing okay.
She thought that he was being a good nurse.
She thought he was being a good nurse. Maybe a
Right.
little obsessive, but she thought he was doing his job and doing it well.
Yeah.
What he was actually doing was constantly searching hundreds of patient records, not only the ones that he was in charge of. So he was searching other people's patients. And it was constant. It wasn't just here and there, constantly. So he would look at the symptoms, he would look at their history, any updates their nurses would put in there. He would look at all of it. So turns out,
Picking his next target.
what he was doing was picking out patients from there. Yep. He would pick out the patient. He would find their IV bag and inject the digoxin, or his drug of choice, into the IV bag, and the unsuspecting nurse would then give it to their patient. So he wasn't directly doing this. He was indirectly killing these patients.
Wow.
Now, he did directly kill a lot of them as well. But this was one of the manners that
how
he would
go about
how
it.
he would overdose these patients. Yep. So once the IV bag was hung, he would then go back to the Cerner and check on that patient again to watch how his cocktail would affect them and basically watch them die from the Cerner.
Jesus.
Yep. So during the investigation, the patient that they decided to start their focus on, the Reverend, his sister, who was the main family that was there. So when he was in the hospital, I don't know exactly what he was in the hospital for, but he wasn't doing well. So his sister, at one point in time, he wasn't doing well.
Yeah.
So his sister decided to save him his dignity. She put a DNR on him so that people, they wouldn't try to do any kind of life-saving measures because, I mean, honestly...
It's a do not resuscitate.
Yeah, do not resuscitate on him because, honestly, even life-saving measures can take a toll on the body.
It really
CPR
can.
really sucks on somebody.
CPR, especially like if you're doing it correctly, like you could possibly
not like in the movies.
Yeah, you could possibly break ribs.
You will break ribs.
Yeah, and to someone who is elderly, that can be incredibly, incredibly damaging.
Right.
It's not like you're like 20 to 30 and don't worry, that's gonna heal up.
Yeah, it's going to take a little bit to heal.
Exactly.
While you were saved, you're still going to be down and out for a while trying to heal from CPR.
Exactly.
Or having a tube shoved down your throat or any of the above.
An AED. Just
exactly.
Shoom.
Exactly. So she decided to put that do not resuscitate order on him.
Okay.
So he ended up improving though. He was supposed to make it out of the hospital. Yeah. So she was like, fantastic. Let's take the DNR off. So he did. Once he improved, that's when Charles stepped in and decided so quickly that he was one of the patients that he wanted to give medicine to. So DNR was not in place when he declined so quickly.
Was this gentleman under his care or was it under someone else's care? Or was he one of the ones that he found in the program?
I think he was under his care at one point in time. I don't know if he was when he took these measures himself, but at one point in time, Charles was one of them that was his patients. So, and it said that his sister was a nurse, this reverend. Mm-hmm. His sister was a nurse, which is why they kind of allowed her out of respect. A previous nurse. She was retired at the time.
Okay.
But they kind of allowed her to do... basically to stay longer than they normally would have, stay for certain things and everything, just out of respect for a former nurse.
Right.
So that's why she had put the DNR on him, then she had taken it off, and then Charles intervened, and he very, very quickly declined to where she didn't have time for another DNR or anything like that. So they tried all the life-saving measures, and they tried everything they could to save him, but ultimately it didn't work.
Yeah. So...
at the time, they ruled it out as natural causes. So, while the investigation was going on, so, the months later, this is the man that they're focusing on. The investigators, this was one of them that they thought was fishy.
Right.
So, they went to the Reverend's sister, and they told her what they were doing. They told her that they think there's a lot of unexplained deaths, and your brother possibly was one of them. And he, they didn't have to explain a lot to her, thank goodness, because they weren't sure how they were going to explain medicine to a nurse.
Right, yeah.
So they say it, and she's like, no, you don't have to explain it to me. I know that. So they wanted to get her permission to exhume her brother to do an actual autopsy on him.
Because they didn't do an autopsy prior?
I don't know that there was, an actual autopsy done.
Okay.
Because they ruled it as natural causes. He was sick already in the hospital, so they're like, maybe it was his time. It was not his time because he was improving.
Yeah.
So she agreed to exhume her brother so that they could do an autopsy because at this point in time, she was pissed. So
good. I would imagine.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So I looked up normal or therapeutic levels of digoxin in someone's system would be anywhere from 0.8 to 2 milligrams. Toxic levels are considered over 2.4 milligrams. They found his levels at almost 10 milligrams of digoxin.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So it was like 9 point something. So it was real close to 10 milligrams of digoxin. His cause of death was then changed to digoxin toxicity, and the manner was homicide.
Thank you.
So they have their first victim for the investigation, at least.
Do you have his name?
I can find his name. They mostly just referred to him as the Reverend, though, so I didn't really get it a whole lot. So, in the meantime, Charles gets another nursing job. This time at Montgomery Hospital in Norristown, Pennsylvania. So he's back in Pennsylvania. He lets Amy know And the investigators are panicking because they're like, we can't have him at another hospital.
Yeah.
He can't be. We're in New Jersey. We're trying to get this done here. He cannot be at another hospital. So they don't let him to even start this job. So even though he didn't have any legal ground to do so, one of the detectives got in contact with one of the high-ups at Montgomery Hospital and told them, as a concerned citizen and as an investigator, you should not put your new hire on the schedule. I cannot tell you why, but as an investigator, I highly recommend you don't put him on the rotations.
Right.
So they didn't. They
Good.
came up with some kind of reason on the spot and told Charles. They just didn't put him on the roster. So that at least bought him a little bit of time. So I think this was like October at this point in time.
Okay.
Because I think he was fired in October, maybe started like right around Halloween or something like that. We're supposed to, at least.
Okay.
The investigators, they finally end up going and talking to Dr. Marcus from Poison Control.
Mm-hmm.
So, and Dr. Marcus...
Did they call the
What?
hotline?
They did not.
Damn.
No, they went to him.
Okay.
They went to Poison Control, to his office.
That probably makes more sense.
Yes. To talk to him. But what's funny is Dr. Marcus could also throw some shade. And he goes, his exact quote when they walked in was, "You're late. I was expecting you 5 months ago." So good on you, Dr. Marcus. So he gave them everything. He gave them the phone recordings, phone recordings, all of his research that he had, all of that. So now that they have all of that, all of their professional opinions and all of that, they decided to set up Amy with a wire and to go actually talk to Charles and try to get a confession out of him.
Yeah.
So they decide to set Amy up with a wire. And this is November at this point in time.
Mm-hmm.
They set up at a restaurant with investigators listening in a van near the restaurant, and they put the wire on Amy and sent her in.
Mm-hmm.
So she is her typical Amy, and this is, again, the investigators are like, this woman
It's so good.
is so good. You literally would not know that she was nervous as hell.
Right.
So while she was not able to get an actual confession out of him, she definitely rattled him, telling him she knows what he did. And as his friend, she's like, I want to help you, Charles. You know how bad this looks, right? What happened? What did you do? Because, of course, it didn't start out all like that, but because they were talking, he was, complaining about his girlfriend, how she's wanting him to move out, and she's pregnant, and...
'Cause you're a piece of shit.
Yeah, and he, proudly kind of showed her the newspaper, because at this point in time, there was a leak to the media. So it's in the newspapers that people are investigating deaths at a hospital.
Yeah.
So he proudly shows her this newspaper, hey, yeah, look at that. I don't know if he said that's me or something, or look, they're talking about me, or I don't know, something. So then she's like, so you know how bad this looks.
Yeah.
I'm your friend. Let me help you. Just what happened? And he just kind of I don't want to say shut down, but he just kept saying, I can't. He just over and over again. And she said after a while, Charles was no longer there. There was this whole other person that she was seeing, and it's kind of scared her, because she's like, this is not the Charles that I know, that I was trying to defend.
Yeah.
So he never actually came out to her and told her, yes, it was me. He just kept saying, I can't, over and over again.
I wouldn't expect him to.
No.
He's not that kind of person.
Nope. So after they left the restaurant, Amy, once she got to the van, she collapsed and was like, did you get it? All of that. So, she was kind of a wreck afterward, but they were like, you were awesome. Thank you so much. While he never actually said, yes, I did it, he's never denying any of it. So,
I mean, that's something at least.
Yep. So, on his way out, they police officers went after him, and they stopped him, and boom, right then and there, they arrested him. So, and this was after they left the restaurant.
Yeah.
So, during the interrogation, he wasn't giving them a confession. Again, he was basically falling apart completely. And he was trying to curl up into a ball, into the fetal position, best he could while being chained and handcuffed to the thing, and was like actively crying into his hands and saying, I can't. Completely falling apart.
Shaking my head still. Sorry.
Yep. So after a day or so with just that, they came up with an idea to get Amy involved again.
Yeah.
They're like, we need to ask one more thing of you. Is there any possible way that we can bring you in to see if he would confess to you in this environment? And she agreed. So they told him, dude, listen, your friend, she's a wreck. If she learned that you were arrested, she's an absolute mess, and she's been asking to see you. Is there any way that you can console her, tell her everything's okay, and talk to her?
Yeah.
Trying to play that kind of thing. And he agreed. They said, if you talk to Amy, would you cooperate with us? If you comfort Amy, would you cooperate? And he agreed. So they bring him into a room with Amy. They actually take the handcuffs off and everything. They bring him into a room with Amy, and she's like, she starts talking to him, and he agrees to confess and start talking.
Good.
So they bring Dr. Marcus in.
Fucking weasel.
Because they need somebody with the medical background to start talking to him about all of these things.
Right.
So, in the docuseries, Dr. Marcus said that he agreed to confess as long as Dr. Marcus could convince him that he was the one that killed that particular patient. In the book, it seemed like since Amy was in there and he comforted Amy, he agreed to tell everybody what he did. So regardless, Dr. Marcus was involved, and they started going through patients and multiple patients. Yeah. And going through, and he started confessing.
Well, good.
The super shitty part, though, is there was a lot of times, he didn't even remember the patient's name. If they could give him what the patient was in for and his symptoms and things like that and what ended up happening, he'd be like, oh yeah, that one was me. I just didn't remember what his name was.
Well, Of course not, because of the way that he did it with the, what's that program called?
The Cerner.
Yes. Because, I mean, if he did it just that, of course he's not paying attention to the name.
Yeah.
He doesn't give a shit.
No.
And especially with how many people that he possibly killed, you're not going to remember names.
Nope.
You're not.
So the book said that he would talk and talk and talk and talk. And then when the investigator was like, hold on, I got to flip the tape because they're recording all of this.
Yeah.
He would stop exactly where he was at, be silent until the tape was flipped, start recording, and pick up exactly where he left off, and then just keep talking. He ended up confessing to 40 patient deaths, and then the tapes ran out. And that's where he stopped. Yep.
Tapes.
Uh-huh. So, Charles doesn't like how he is referred to as a serial killer, because he's different.
No.
He's different. You don't understand.
No.
He's not entirely wrong. In that, he didn't keep mementos. He didn't keep records. He wasn't doing anything along those lines that a lot of serial killers do. Mm-hmm. But a serial killer to this magnitude, though, you're not going to have time to keep shit.
No.
You're not going to be able to have that much stuff.
No, I mean,
from his victims.
You may not be considered a serial killer, but this is a different kind of serial killer.
This is a different kind of serial killer. all in all, though, he is a serial killer. I don't care
yes.
what he says.
Yes.
So
I don't give a shit about what he says, but in the grand scheme of things,
and
technically he is.
And then that's the other thing. Sometimes he wasn't even the one to do that.
Right.
He wasn't even the one to hands-on kill that person. He would spike the IV bags random sometimes.
Yeah.
There was some days that he would look him up on Cerner and choose which ones. Some spoke to him more than others. And then others times he was like, here's a few saline bags. Let's do insulin in this one, digoxin in this one, that paralytic one. Let's put this in this. And just we'll see where it goes.
Basically causing mayhem anywhere he possibly could.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, so sometimes he was actively doing it and the one injecting it. Sometimes he was not the one injecting them. So he would say how he helped the people die. He never used the terms kill or murder. He helped them die. A lot of things he said was he wanted to basically, help them out of their misery type of thing.
Fuck off.
Or he wanted to save them the indignity of doing all kinds of things to them and shit like that. Yeah. No. You, sir, you don't get to choose when somebody lives or dies.
No.
What gives you the right? That's absolutely ridiculous. Honestly, it was kind of a big old fuck you to hospitals. Honestly, if you ask me, that's what it is.
It literally stems from the hospital that lied to him about his mother. He saw it as their fault for letting him get. He saw it as their fault, the hospital's fault, for letting him get away with this for 16 years and never catching him. It was the hospital's fault that he was able to do this. It's not my fault that I killed a bunch of people. Nope. No. It's the hospitals that hired me.
Yep. Ultimately, there was never a trial. Not one trial for Charles in any murders. What happened was there was basically a blanket plea because he was cooperating with prosecutors. So instead of having to take him to all these different counties, because there was 9 different places that he was killing people at.
And
in 2 different states.
Yeah.
So lots of different counties. So since he was cooperating, they just did a big old blanket plea. So I found the plea paperwork actually. You can get the actual wording from there because I thought the wording was very interesting to me. Mm-hmm. So the overview of it was since he was cooperating, they would not seek the death penalty. At first, Charles was actually asking for the death penalty. Because, he's a tragic suicide case. Well, then he rethought because, that would be the tragic end to his story with this death penalty. Then he rethought and decided against it. So then that's why they did this plea. And since he's cooperating, they're not asking for the death penalty. So this plea pretty much covered all of the counties that he killed people in. And there were 14 people listed on there that he pled guilty to killing and 2 attempted murders. So overall 14 murders, 2 attempted. Although, altogether, I think he ended up 22 people is what he ultimately pled guilty to killing. And then in 2006, he was sentenced to 11 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole.
How many years is that?
Thank goodness.
Do you know?
He said they said that essentially he'd be eligible for parole or whatever in 2,400 and something. So in 400 years, you will be eligible for maybe going to the parole board to ask for parole. They're not saying you're eligible for parole at this point in time. You just have to go to the board and plead your case. So
yeah.
11 consecutive life sentences is what this dude got. So even though he truly confessed to 40 deaths, people think that the real number of people he could have killed could be upwards of 400 people because they had to account for the random saline bags he contaminated and people that he just forgot about. So Charles has been confronted with that number and he doesn't deny it. He doesn't say but he doesn't deny it.
Yeah.
Yep. During one of his court hearings, he was giving a statement of for himself or something. And then he told the judge that he needs to step down. And then he literally just kept repeating over and over again, Your Honor, you need to step down. Your Honor, you need to step down. Your Honor. Like, he just kept repeating it. So the judge...
It was for like a half an hour.
No, it was the entire court hearing.
Oh, really?
The entire court hearing. Because what was happening was victim impact statements. The victims' families were going up on the stand and giving a victim impact statement. This is what was happening at this court hearing.
Okay, good. Okay, so even though there wasn't a trial, people could still give victim impact statements.
Because even though there was a plea, they had to set a separate date for the victim impact statements and then a separate date to sentence him. They're not doing it all in one court hearing.
Okay, good. Because at first I was like, wait, so you're telling me that they didn't get a chance to...
Oh, no, they did. Good. They absolutely did.
Good.
But he would not stop saying. The judge told him, you're going to be held in contempt. You have to stop talking. And then, so the judge ordered him to be restrained. He still wouldn't stop. He ordered the spit mask that they put over the defendants' heads. Mm-hmm. The spit mask to be put over his head. Still wouldn't stop saying it. The judge literally ordered for him to be gagged in court. So what the court security did, or the officer that was with him, they basically put the towel around his head and kind of used almost like a garrote almost, and was like twisting to try to keep him from still talking. He was still trying to repeat it over and over again with this towel.
Still being,
So he continued to chant it. So then the judge finally was like, get the fucking duct tape. They duct taped his mouth with a gag, like with still a towel on his mouth. And they ended up having to duct tape him. And during the entire time the victims' families were talking, he still continued to try to say that the entire time until he was out of court. Your Honor, you need to step down.
I have like no words.
I don't either. I can't even imagine that happening in court.
A judge calling for duct taping
of a defendant's mouth.
Yes.
Seriously.
Jesus.
So, to kind of wrap this up, Charles never really wanted to die.
No. He
never actually wanted to die. No. There were, psychologists and everything like that who have talked to him, and basically they said that's what happened. He always ran for help with all of his suicide attempts.
Yeah.
Close to 20 suicide attempts, at least, But as soon as he did it, there was not like regret. It was, I need somebody to see this. I need to get the help because nobody loves you more than when you're dying. Just like that quote I said in the last episode. So he grew up in a very Catholic family, apparently, even though his childhood wasn't great. He went to Catholic school and all of that. And in Catholic school, suicide was a sin, and that could land you in purgatory. Well, he definitely didn't want to go to purgatory. So, actually, I don't know if I said this quote in the last one, but there was a quote from one of the psychiatrists that talked to him that I think summed it up, because he didn't want to die. And the quote was, but he could make himself sick, and in many ways, sick was better. Nobody loves you the way they do when you're dying. So, I think that pretty much sums it up.
That really does.
Really well.
I'll let you fix your mic and then I'll ask my next question. So, the first suicide attempt when he was a child, do you think that definitely really started it? Do you think that one was genuine? Or do you think that...
The thing is, when you're that young, I don't think you can fully understand what's happening.
I don't
first
think
of all,
can, because I think death as an adult is definitely a hard concept to really understand. And I think when you're a child, I think that it's really incomprehensible when you're a child. So
things are very black and white when you're a child.
Yeah.
So and there's so much gray in the world. I really do think that he was not happy as a child. So I think that may have been genuine because he just wanted to stop with all of the hurt and all of the name calling and all of the punching bag that he was. He wanted it all to stop.
Misery.
So that, I think, may have been genuine. But then once he saw what happened afterward, that may have been kind of stuck in his head as that's what happens.
So do you think the attempt after his mother passed,
that also...
do you think that also was probably genuine?
May have been genuine as well, because he was so close to his mother.
Yeah.
The rest, like during the military, obviously, you know, that's nothing to, you know, shake a stick at, because I don't know that it was during wartime that he was in the military, but I'm sure it wasn't any kind of walk in the park.
No, of course not.
The rest of the time, I don't think he was in love with his wife enough to, once the divorce was done, end his life. I don't think that when he went to court for stalking, that was enough for him. I don't think he truly loved anything enough or cared for anything enough to really feel a connection anymore to where he truly wanted to end his life. I think the first couple when he was young, I think that may have been genuine, but I think the rest, I think he just wanted people feeling sorry.
He just wanted the attention.
He wanted that attention.
Yeah.
And he wanted to set the narrative of how people thought about him. Now, I am no psychologist. However, that's just how I feel. But I think this psychologist summed it up perfectly when he says nobody loves you the way they do when you're dying. And that's what he wanted. Yeah. That's exactly what he wanted. I mean, he thinks he was so tragically misunderstood, and it was him against the world, basically, is kind of what he saw. There was, honestly, and I have this in here as kind of an aside too, that I really think there was a part of him that was truly self-loathing, and that truly may have been suicidal. But when he was killing patients, and this is another thing that a psychologist had said, when he was killing patients, he didn't need suicide because this was basically suicide by proxy.
Yeah.
So it was him pushing off his suicide to other people.
Yeah.
So when he was doing that for 16 years, that satisfied that, basically.
Yeah.
So, little extra something here to add to it all. Mm-hmm. This is pretty, just kind of wrap it up with a bow. A really gross bow. Charles donated one of his kidneys while in prison. Because he just loved helping people.
Fuck.
He donated it to his ex-girlfriend / baby mama's brother. Yep. And basically it was all done very secretly.
Well, yeah.
Because there had to be a court order for it. He couldn't just donate it. He had to basically get permission to do that. And, of course, everybody's in an uproar once they found out that this dude's trying to donate a kidney. But he just loved helping people. And he thought,
no.
Why condemn me? Why can't I do this wonderful thing?
Now.
That's why I became a nurse in the first place.
Now, I will say that, first of all, did the gentleman accept the kidney?
Yeah. Because actually...
well, I mean, I guess you're not going to look a gift kidney in the mouth.
No.
You know?
Well, because I think what happened
if you need a kidney.
I don't know exactly what happened, but none of his family members were a match for him. So the mom, I guess, basically kind of...
And Charles was?
A literal perfect match.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I guess she had, written a letter. I don't know if it was, to newspapers or somebody, but, pleading, please, somebody, we're not able to do this. Otherwise, we wouldn't be asking for the public to please donate this kidney. And, of course, Charles knew this guy because it was his ex-girlfriend's brother. So he knew him. They didn't particularly like each other type of thing, but because Charles was a weird little fucker, but...
And a murderer.
But Charles was like, sure, I'll do it. And when they found out he was an exact match for this dude, it was kind of one of those things where in the middle of the night at the prison, a guard came to it almost felt like they were putting a sack over his head, throwing him in a van, driving for all kinds of different ways, just so that not followed, and then like toss him to the hospital, put you out, take it out, and go back to work type of deal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's kind of what it felt like. But they truly came and got him in the middle of the night and took him to the hospital, got all done, back to prison, done.
Wow.
So, yep.
Well, I mean, I'm glad that guy was able to get a kidney.
Yeah,
and live.
absolutely.
How crazy is it that now he can be like, I have a serial killer's kidney in my body.
In my fridge.
No. He didn't get to keep it like that.
Yeah, so that's
crazy.
That is, and currently Charles is in a New Jersey prison. I didn't care enough to look it up because I don't want to look at his stupid face.
I kind of want to look it up now. I will, because my next one, I found his inmate number, so that's fun. Yeah. I literally got to see it last night when we were like doing recording and whatnot. I was just like, okay, that's cool as fuck. But
yeah.
So question.
Yeah.
So if he had been caught or hadn't been caught, or if he for somehow got his license revoked as a nurse,
mm-hmm.
do you think he would have ever actually killed someone?
Tried to kill somebody outside of the hospital setting?
Yes.
I don't know.
Like
this is a strange one for me because
or do you think he's just so weaselly and so that you don't think he would have ever done it had he not been given the opportunity that he did?
I don't know if he would have. I don't know, because he possibly may have killed a dog or two. Don't know.
Yeah.
But I mean, he was bartending in between getting fired at Somerset and getting hired at the Montgomery place.
Okay.
While Amy was still trying, keeping in contact with him, he did bartend for a while. So, I mean, there's no things of him killing people outside of the hospital setting in between his jobs.
Well,
so.
No, because he was just waiting on the next job to continue the cycle.
Yeah. So if his nursing license had been revoked at the time, I truly don't know what he would have done.
Or is it if he would have never became a nurse? Do you think he would have?
I definitely think he would have killed people in another way. Absolutely.
Or himself.
Well, maybe he would have just actually done it if he was. So I think another thing was, every time he called the hospital or went to the hospital after he swallowed a bunch of pills, it's a hospital that he worked at.
Yeah,
because I think that it was,
yeah.
He wanted those people to see him like that.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. We'll never know. He gone. He is in prison.
Do you have any information
forever?
Do you have any information on his time in prison or anything since then, or is there just nothing to report on?
Nothing to report on. Just he donated a kidney. That's it.
Alrighty.
Yeah. Wow. So that is Charles Cullen, Angel of Death.
Pot. Dos.
I was wondering where you're going with that. I'm like, what are we doing with the pot?
Alrighty. So yeah. Scumbag.
Yeah.
Weasley little.
Yeah.
Fuck.
Mm-hmm.
Alrighty.
Makes me angry.
Yeah. So thank you all for joining us for part 2 of Charles Edmund Cullen, the Angel of Death.
Yeah.
And there are
others.
Several.
I didn't watch the other on the Netflix documentary. Mm-hmm. I didn't watch the other 3 episodes.
Yeah.
But they're all different people.
Yeah, because I mean, there's several Angel of Deaths. There are Doctor Deaths.
Yeah, well, yeah.
And then there are the ones that specifically, there are Angel of Deaths that specifically go after children.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a whole other thing.
So maybe we'll cover another one. If you can think of one, let us know.
I can think of a couple off the top of my head.
I'm not talking to you.
Fine. Alrighty. So thank you for joining us all this week. And if you'd like to keep in contact with us, you can follow us on Facebook at
2KOA.
You can follow us on Instagram at
2KOA Podcast.
And you can follow us on YouTube. We do have a YouTube channel where you can see our pretty pig faces at
2KOA Podcast.
And we also have a Gmail where you can contact us if you'd like to suggest something at
2KOApodcast@gmail.com.
All right, and we hope you keep listening. And I forgot where I was going with that. We hope you keep listening, and we will see you. Yes, we will see you all next time.
Bye.
Bye.